So now that Dan Didio is out at DC Comics, being fired by AT&T Time Warner, this is a really big deal. A lot of people are talking about this, and a lot of people are really wondering what this means for DC Comics going forward in the future. And honestly, I don't really know. I've got a few ideas, but I'm not an insider, so I can't say with any certainty anything that will or will not happen because of this. People are asking me what I think about it, so I'm going to share my opinions on the departure of Dan Didio, who was there for upwards of 20 years, responsible for all of the major events. They all happened under his watch. So that would be Flashpoint, New 52, Rebirth, Dark Knight's Metal, everything that happened. Bringing in of Brian Michael Bendis, the Superman giving up his secret identity, the death of Alfred. So many things happened under Didio's watch, and a lot of people really don't like Dan Didio. And truthfully, Dan Didio working at DC Comics, there was a lot of internal unrest between people that really liked what he had to say and then other people who were just not part of the Didio faction. So there was lots of unrest under the roof at DC as well. So I think that maybe some of that added to his departure. Now, those of us who read comics know that 5G was on the way. And my own personal thoughts on 5G are it's probably going to suck. I'm not excited about it at all. We saw something similar to this in Marvel Comics with Marvel Now, where there was kind of a changing of the guard and kind of moderning it up and switching out characters for other characters. And for the most part, it was not a financial success. And Marvel abandoned it and quickly went back to a more recognizable format. And I think that's the same thing we're going to see with this whole DC 5G. DC's biggest characters, their largest properties, the ones that bring in the most money, need to stay where they are, on top. And when you switch those people out, when you switch those characters out, you automatically are going to lose fan base. Built in, that's going to be a guarantee. And you're not going to be gaining any new users, any new readers, just because you've switched things up like that. Now, true, DC 5G, which is, I guarantee, still going to be happening. Whether Didio, who is intimately connected with it, whether his departure really has an effect on it, I think is also true. I think it will have an effect on it. I think that the longevity of it will definitely be affected. But DC 5G is not going to bring in any new users, any new readers. And I know that was the hope with the New 52 as well, that they could turn people into comic book readers who had previously not been comic book readers. And there was a measure of success, but in reality it was a lot of just old school DC readers who had fallen off, had decided to re-jump onto the ship, and people from different comic book companies, people that usually would read Marvel or say Image or Dark Horse, also dipped their feet in the DC water, feeling they liked the more edgy Superman and, you know, the more modernized uniforms for the characters. So, but it really didn't do a lot to bring in a ton of new readers. And, you know, after 5 years, the New 52 ran its course, and it proved after that time to be a critical failure. It did very well in the beginning, but near the end, understand, the New 52 began to tank and sink very quickly. And there were still very good storylines within it, but overall, it definitely needed a rehaul. And it stepped on the toes and ticked off a lot of old school DC fans, in some ways, myself included. And that's why we ended up getting Rebirth, which I think was a great idea. It did fantastically well, and there were some really wonderful stories, and they brought in the things that fans recognized and knew and loved, and that opened the door to bring in many more things that fans knew and loved while keeping what worked from the New 52. However, under Didio, DC, especially after the New 52, or even before the New 52, he liked to darken the DC universe up. And in my opinion, I don't mind having dark stories every once in a while that really try our heroes, of course. But I really want DC Comics to be about how awesome the heroes are. And Didio seemed to like to darken the universe up quite a bit. All the stories were heading towards this really dark phase, you know, and I don't think that helps. And the idea of 5G in general, which I know I'm jumping topics here, but I'm you know, organizing my thoughts as I talk. The idea of 5G in general, I think, is a bad idea to AT&T Time Warner, because remember, they're also in the business of releasing movies with Jeff Johns at the helm. And Jeff Johns and Didio, for the record, they're not friends. They don't really get along. I guess they're like maybe working polite to each other, but they both don't see eye to eye professionally, and they're not friends. So you have Jeff Johns, who's part of the movie side of things. And I know that some people right now are going to say, well, Jeff Johns sabotaged Didio from the top down, and I don't think that necessarily happened. I think that's a very dark train of thought. I mean, it might be the case, but I'm not thinking that at this point. I think what happened is that AT&T Time Warner doing these movies, and because they really want to make a lot of money off these movies. They can make more money off of a really good, well-performing Joker movie than they can off of their comic books. But the comics are the source material, and that's where they draw their characters from. That's where they can test things out, test out new waters in the comics and see what works and see what they could maybe do on the big screen, you know, that kind of stuff. But the idea that 5G was going to happen, that's detrimental to the movies, because now you have the source material being completely different to what the film universe is going to be. And there already are major differences, but at least right now, Joker is Joker. You know, Diana is Wonder Woman. You know, Bruce Wayne is Batman. And 5G, this generational thing, was really going to change things up and make things very, very much unrecognizable. And I feel like AT&T Time Warner would have seen that probably as a problem. So take that for what you will. That's just my opinion. Now, there are people wondering if maybe Marvel is going to be buying out DC, or it'll be licensed out to somebody. I'm going to just squash that right now. There's not a chance in hell that the AT&T Time Warner is going to license out DC to their next biggest competitor across the street, so to speak. Disney is not going to have control of DC. I know that there are some fanboys out there who would really like to see DC under the control of Marvel, but that's not going to happen. I bet dollars to donuts we're not going to see that. What does that mean going forward, though? I mean, are they going to cancel DC Comics, which is what some people are saying? I don't see that either. I see the source material as it'll remain. They'll continue to publish the source material. Does that mean that they will, from corporate, change some of the editorial direction? I think so. I think that corporate is definitely going to have more of a say with DC Comics. I can't see that not being the case, especially after this. I mean, it's a big deal to essentially walk out your editor. I mean, he was co-editor with Jim Lee, but to walk out your editor is a big deal. I mean, and Didio showed up to work that day, like, making tweets and doing business calls and running a regular day of work, thinking it was just going to be another day at the office, and then he got to go home early without a job. I'm sure he got a good severance check, and we're not going to hear much from him just because, I mean, I'm sure he's signed a lot of non-disclosure stuff. We're not going to hear very much from him. I'm not worried about him financially. He'll probably do just fine and likely end up in a couple of years finding work somewhere else, because he has a lot of failure under his belt, but he does also have a lot of success as well. I mean, he did actually overtake under his leadership. They did overtake Marvel for a while in sales, you know, so they were not just the number one competitor to Marvel, but at one point they also were the top. And so he will have that kind of stuff on his resume. So I'm not worried about him not having work in the future, but him leaving DC in general, at this point, I'm excited to see what happens, as in who will take over the editorialship as well, and where will the direction go of DC Comics. Right now, Jim Lee is the sole editor because Didio's not there anymore. So he's the sole editor, and I think that Jim Lee is probably going to do just fine. Jim Lee seems to, in my opinion, understand the characters very well. If there was going to be a co-editor to get brought on to do editorial work alongside Jim Lee, I'm thinking, and I wrote a very short list of people that I thought would be kind of nice. Johns could come back and assume some of that role, but right now he's working with the film side of things. And then I wrote it on a piece of paper, and I can't remember. It's actually written on an envelope. Ah, Dan Jurgens. I like Dan Jurgens. Dan Jurgens understands the characters really well. I think Dan Jurgens would do a great job. He's got some good history at DC Comics, and he's also got some classic stories under his belt. So Dan Jurgens would do a great job. And some people are tossing around the name Marv Wolfman. And I think that Marv probably could do a very good job as the editor as well. So, I mean, I don't know for sure exactly who would be the best, because I'm not an internal person. I really don't know. I do know that I really hope to God that it is not Brian Michael Bendis, because, you know, some of the things that he's worked into his master plan I can kind of see the gears working and how they've kind of worked out. But in the same token, he's also made some moves that I really haven't liked, not one bit. And so at this point, if Brian Michael Bendis takes on an editorial role at DC, which honestly I can't really see that happening, because Brian Michael Bendis' comics, his run at DC, handling so many titles, like some of the more teen-oriented titles, Titans, the Superman titles, major events, Event Leviathan, Legion of Superheroes. A lot of that stuff hasn't been super widely appreciated by the fans. It's been either take it or leave it, or just leave it alone altogether. So I can't really see him being pushed into that editorial role. So I guess I'm just speaking from my own hope here. I hope that it's not him. But at this point, I really don't know what the future is going to be. And again, the future of 5G based on Didio leaving, I feel like they're going to change that up. It's too late in the game. It's going to happen. 5G, I really feel like it's going to happen. Otherwise, all the staff would have to put in double, triple hours just trying to rewrite the story and plan things for the future and do the artwork. Like this stuff is, for the most part, a lot of it's already put together and completed. Like, so this is going to happen. But whether it is a long-term thing, I tend to think no at this point. I tend to think that we're headed towards another very large reboot. Obviously, because now with Didio gone, I'm sure that someone upstairs is going to say, let's bring back Clark Kent as Superman's secret identity. That's a good thing. Let's make it so that Wally West actually didn't go a little bit loopy and then kill people and try to frame people, and now he's sitting in the Mobius chair. You know, I feel like the death of Alfred was a very bad thing for DC Comics. Just an all-around stupid idea to kill Alfred. So I feel like we're headed towards a reboot. I feel like that is definitely something that is coming. And if that reboot ends up being something like a 5G, where it's like really we're looking at new people, you know, inhabiting the roles of our favorite characters, which again I don't see happening, then I won't be happy. I really hope that the exit of Dan Didio is something that is a good thing for DC Comics. I don't think that everything he did was necessarily bad. I think that he did do some good things with the DC universe, absolutely. To say that everything that Didio did was horrible, I feel like is an overstatement. But that being said, there certainly were moves that Didio made, and certainly very politicizing, very political in the office. You like to politicize things in the office, and you know, there's stories of it being my way or the highway kind of deal in there. So, and there were factions apparently in the office too, where people kind of kept to themselves and did their own thing, in much the same way that currently we see people that work for DC that are really not supportive of what Bendis is doing, while there are other people who are part of the Bendis cult. Like, they just love everything that he does. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the whole matter. As someone who is not an insider, I'm just a rando DC fan that admittedly doesn't spend all my time studying this kind of stuff. I don't have time for that. I just read the comics that are put out and decide what I like about them and what I don't like about them. So my insight, don't take it by any means as being the best or professional or tops. Like I said, I'm just some rando DC Comics fan with a YouTube channel that just loves DC and rolls with the punches and looks for the best in every situation I possibly can. So anyway, thanks for watching, Super Friends, and take care.